Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. We are here. We have lots to discuss. Some a signing of a defenseman to a lengthy contract, some injury news, some debate, and we start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
I love this part of the NFL season, even with my team being out of it, because let's face it, I mean, this week was very good games, but most of the time we're not getting very good games.
Right.
But the histrionics and the drama that goes on with these coaches are just makes me chuckle. Like, it's a lot to take in. So let's talk about a little bit of it. So Matt Rule gets a massive deal from the Panthers.
Right.
This is after the owner, who very much reminds us of an owner in the NHL, but I won't say who, was looking at Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels didn't want to go there. And so then he throws all this money at Matt Rule, and now every GM in the league is pissed at this owner. What's his name? Tepper, something like that. And
yeah, he's the one who took over for Richardson, right?
Yeah, everybody's mad at him because he gave Matt Rule, an unproven NFL coach, way too much money. He's getting like $10 million a year for 7. Is that right?
7 years, $60 million. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Jeez. So almost 10 a year. So a little under that. So
I think he's the highest paid coach in the NFL now.
With no virtual experience, I know he brought Temple to people in the Philly area love him because he brought Temple to prominence and he's with Baylor. Okay. We move on from that. So with the Giants hiring of Joe Judge, they haven't even done a press conference yet. I think it's today.
Mm-hmm.
If you think the Adam Gase press conference went on with a lot of scrutiny, just wait for this one. This is not going to be a pretty press conference.
Especially if Gettleman's there. Because
if Gettleman's there, woof.
It'll be like opening up a can of Zippo and squeezing it over a bonfire. That's what it'll be like.
Yeah, it's going to be like the Ray Hanley. You know, it's going to be like one of those. So
well, it can't be any worse than Gase last year with that odd stare.
We say that we are going to wait because I think now it could be.
Right.
So we have that. So Mike McCarthy, who owns a house in Dallas, we hear I'm in Dallas for literally 3-4 days, and Jason Garrett doesn't even get fired during that time. The minute I'm up in the air and I'm home, then it's like, all right, yeah, he's fired. And they bring in Mike McCarthy, right? Now, the weird thing about Mike McCarthy is like, they're like, well, he's staying over an extra day in Dallas, so that must mean something good. And it's like, he owns a house in Dallas. He can stay as long as he wants.
Yeah, but don't you remember the reports? He stayed at Jerry Jones's house before the agreement was made.
That's true.
So I mean, hell, I mean, if you've been in Dallas, you were in Dallas for the NHL draft, and you were in Dallas for 3 or 4 days. Does that mean you own a house in Dallas?
I know. So when McCarthy gets hired, that's fine. Now, the Cleveland Browns don't have a coach yet. I don't even know if they have a GM yet. They don't, right?
No.
So they don't have either. So there's all this stuff going around with Josh McDaniels. There's Schwartz out of Philly, who I think could be a really good candidate. If you go back and look at his Lions record, like, everybody has failed with the Lions, right? The fact that he was 8-8 once with them probably bodes well. And
he's a great defensive coordinator. He was a defensive coordinator with the Bills for a couple of years.
He's done wonders with the Eagles defense. There's no question. And then there's another guy out of San Fran, Soleil, something like that. Yeah, so that's going on. Now, back to the Giants.
Let's say this. It's very strange that the sort of cookie cutter, non-spectacular hire was the Redskins getting Rivera and bringing in Del Rio. They actually, it's like Rivera's an established coach, was coaching as recently as a couple weeks ago, got to a Super Bowl. He's respected. You'd think Dan Snyder would be like, it'd be like Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, but they didn't go that way. Now it could be that way when, if they trade their their second overall or third overall pick, wherever they're picking, or, you can't underestimate the ability of Dan Snyder to screw things up. But compared to Joe Judge, I was on the radio in Buffalo this morning. We interviewed Bob Glauber from Newsday, who's the head of the NFL Writers Association, and he was basically saying that it sounds like the Giants sort of cheaped out on Rule.
Oh, they did, because he told them to match it.
Yeah,
and they didn't match it.
And I asked
his allegiance to the Panthers because he tried to stay with the Giants job.
I asked him. I says, this is an organization over the last 30 years that you've had Parcells, you've had after a Hanley situation, which was not good. You had Coughlin, who provided stability in a couple of Super Bowls. Now, this is not your granddad's Giants. Now, they're more dysfunctional.
Mara kids not knowing what they're doing.
Well, and I said to him, I said, the Maras and the Tishes, there's unanimity there in terms of wanting the team to be successful, but in terms of how they imagine that to be possible, one side wanted not to fire Shermer, wanted to keep Gettleman and Shermer. The other one wanted a clean house, and they compromised and fired the coach and kept the general manager.
All right. So without giving away too much, I met Lawrence Tisch because I worked in a Lowe's hotel. He owned Lowe's hotels, and he was a brilliant guy. He would walk around in like a JCPenney suit, right? Mm-hmm. So he was a self-made, brilliant guy. He owned Bulova. That's a long time ago, man. So anybody named Tisch, I don't give the same sort of reverence the same way anybody named Mara, right? It's so far removed from the original that I can't give it much credence. So there's that. Robert Saleh is the guy who I was talking about. He's a defensive coordinator for the 49ers. He had a good interview with the Browns, apparently. So there's that. But now the Giants are thinking about inviting in Freddie Kitchens to be on the offensive coordinator staff. And they already talked about Jason Garrett, too. So I could just imagine this, like, Jason Garrett will be the OC, Freddie Kitchens will be like the wide receiver guy, and the guy with no experience – well, very little, no coordinator experience, will be the head coach. Like, this could just be the best story in years for all Jet fans, because even though the Jets don't have anything against the Giants fans for the most part, they're used to getting destroyed in the media. The media has now got a new target. It's the Giants.
Well, Freddie Kitchens was the fallback after they got denied by Don Coryell.
So this is a fun part of the season because it's amazing what teams will do. And again, as a Met fan and a moderate fan of Moneyball, I didn't think it was a great movie.
I thought it was a great movie. I didn't think it was a great book.
I don't know what Paul DiPodesto has over Jimmy Haslam in Cleveland and why he has this undue influence. I can't explain it, but he got it.
I have to say it brings me a certain amount of glee to see the Giants just fumble around and falter. I don't know what it is. Maybe it has to do with the missed field goal. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, January 9th, 2020.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Well, okay, let's start. There were only 3 games last night, so let's start with some news. Then we'll get to the games, and then we'll go back to some news and discussion here.
Well, I have one more thing to add, too, about the NFL, because Anthony Mingione gave us a tweet that basically said that Groh is going to be leaving Philly. They're going to part ways with him. Well, I listened to the Howie Roseman press conference yesterday. By the way, he's at this point a snake oil salesman and not the GM people think he is. But Doug Peterson and Howie said he's coming back.
And then they fire him today.
They're going to fire him today after the live press conference. Like, I don't understand this league. But anyhow.
Well, things changed in 24 hours.
Right.
So last night, just before the start of game time for the 7:00 games or 7:30 games, it came out that the Calgary Flames had re-signed defenseman Rasmus Anderson. Excuse me. There's lots of Rasmuses in the league. Rasmus Anderson to a 6-year contract extension at $4.55 million. Now, Anderson's not a big scoring defenseman. He's more of a stay-at-home type, but good mobility, a solid defenseman. I heard some criticism that the 4.55 for him sets sort of a new standard for sort of stay-at-home shutdown guys. I don't know if that's the case, because I think Mark-Edward Vlasic is a shutdown guy, and he's making $7 million. So I think this is far away.
The top pairing shutdown guy. Anderson is not a top pairing.
Right. No, he's right. Exactly. He's a top 4. I no. What do you think of the signing, first of all, Ross?
I think the signing's good. I'm actually looking up to see, how many minutes he plays, because I'm not worried about the points. He gets you some points. Like last year, he had 19. He's ahead of that pace this year. Maybe he'll get 25 this year. But I'm looking for time on the ice. This year, 19 minutes. So they've upped him, and he's passed the test. So I think in this league, for a 19, 20-minute defenseman, it's a good signing.
Yeah, and he played a couple years in the OHL with Barrie, worked his way a couple years in the AHL. Now this is his second full season, and he's an RFA. This is a reflection of how costly it is for defensemen.
Yeah.
Now we'll get into our defensive discussion later on, but one thing that this may indicate, and we know based on just looking at Cap Central or Cap Friendly, that Calgary has 2 defensemen in TJ Brody and Travis Hamonic who are UFA at the end of the year. Now they've locked up Anderson for 6 years. Giordano is under contract for, I think, another year or 2. I'm looking up right now. 2 years. 2 years. 2 more years at 6.75. They signed Hannafin to an extension a little while back. And Anderson and Shillington were both RFA. They have 3 UFAs, with Michael Stone being sort of a stopgap after he had been bought out. So there's some transition there in Calgary, and the indicator is they may re-sign one of those UFAs, either Hamonic or Brody, but probably with them signing Anderson, probably not both of them.
Right. I think Brody's the one that goes, because at this point, they need the strong defenders more than they need the scoring and puck moving.
Right.
Like that's part of Calgary's problem, because that might help their goaltending, which is still not fantastic and probably not championship quality, right? So I would look to that and see, and because again, Anderson's kind of like a Travis Hamonic type.
Right.
He is. And in this day and age, those guys, because they're not overly expensive, are pretty valuable to have. I'm looking up with Anderson. He did have big years, big offensive years for Barrie. And Dale Harachuk was the coach there. And I found Dale Harachuk to be just a great coach. I'm trying to look up to see if he was a pairing with Ekblad, but I think he was too late. I think he was a little late in the game for that.
Yeah, but Ekblad was 2014, and he was still in Sweden at that point.
Yeah, so it was the next year for him. But Dale Harachuk knows how to coach guys, and if you think about it, you think about all those guys that have turned pro from Barrie. Mm-hmm. Just the time that I was there, I remember talking to LeBanc. I'm talking to Ekblad.
Wasn't Scheifele Barrie?
Yeah, not on that team though. I don't think he was with those guys.
Yeah, no. I mean, Blandisi, Mangiapane, Brendan Lemieux.
Yep. I mean, it produced a lot of pros.
Yeah. So I mean,
something about that program.
Mackenzie Blackwood.
Yeah.
Yeah, LeBanc. Yeah. So yeah, you're right.
Very successful program. So this is good. This is what you should do with some excess money, is to re-put it into the right guys. Mm-hmm. And look, there's going to be a lot of teams in need of upgrades. And we can talk about that in a minute. I know you had a question up here.
Yeah, I know. This is sort of where I was going, and we'll talk about the evolving defensive picture right now in the league, and a little later on after we go through the games. But Esmir asked the question that I asked you about a half an hour ago. I would think that if they sign Anderson, now they have 3 UFAs. They're probably, you can't get anything for Michael Stone, but you can get something for Hamonic. You can get something for Brody. Would Calgary trade? I think they would trade one of them. I don't think they would trade both. Whatever one they don't think that they want to re-sign. I think they would trade. Would they trade him for picks or players at the deadline? I would say there's a possibility there if they get enough back that makes it worth their while. They don't want to make themselves too thin on defense because that hurts them in terms of the playoffs.
I think with Brody, they could get back a roster player and either a pick or a decent prospect, a B or a C prospect, because he is a UFA.
Yeah,
he is at 4.6, so prorated over that's probably over $2 million. So, or somewhere around $2 million. I'm not a mathematician, but that's a lot of money at the deadline for somebody to add. So, and again, that contract for Calgary, that's turned out to be a bad signing. That he's got a modified no trade too, which again is beyond me. But he would be the guy I would look to move.
They hand those out like candy. Yeah. So now, okay, the other news that was very notable. And again, this may have an impact on our discussion a little later on. Report came out from San Jose on San Jose captain Logan Couture. The Sharks tried to sort of soft soap it, but the report is that he has a fractured ankle and that he is out for several weeks. They said, well, it's a small fracture, and we're going to look at it after 6 weeks. Because if the drama of several weeks, fractured ankle, you look at where San Jose is, they're playing terribly this year. And I think that what I said to you earlier in terms of the mindset of Doug Wilson, it has to be right. Is like, now you're so far behind, your team is not having any success, your goaltending is terrible, the mix is wrong. You've got UFAs that are going to be attractive. I think he's a seller now. I think whatever he can sell or whatever he can do to shake up that team, he's going to have to do.
Yeah, he is going to have to do it. I think it's more than 6 weeks. I do. They're going to put him in the hyperbaric chamber as much as they can and cross their fingers. But I do think it's getting dark in San Jose, and I do think they're going to have to move out some salary. So Brendan Dillon, he's the guy that would likely get moved from there. He's one of those guys that teams could be looking to upgrade. Teams that I know will be looking to upgrade, Carolina Hurricanes, they'll be looking to upgrade because I hear they might be looking to upgrade out of Jake Gardner. I have heard that for a little while now. Maybe that'll change by the deadline. Who knows? Surely the Flyers are going to want to upgrade because even though Braun's coming back after the All-Star break, Myers, and we'll talk about him later, isn't quite there. Offensively, sure. Defensively in coverage, no. So they could use an upgrade. The Islanders need an upgrade.
Toronto needs an upgrade.
Toronto needs an upgrade. So there's at least 4 or 5 teams that are going to be looking to get an upgrade. And so, who are the teams they'll be looking at? They might be looking at Calgary. They might be looking at San Jose. They might be looking at Ottawa. They might even be looking at the Leafs if the Leafs swap out someone like Cody Ceci for someone longer term,
right,
to get an upgrade. So,
or simply to clear his cap space so they can make another move.
Right. So I think we're going to see a lot of defensive movement. I do.
Well, okay, let's start with the games from last night. We'll start with the Winnipeg-Toronto game. I watched that one intently. And let's just say this. I mean, the Leafs are now 15-5-2 under Sheldon Keefe. They're going to make the playoffs unless there's a dramatic drop-off. They have unbelievable offensive talent, which I think we knew.
Yeah.
And they've weathered a lot of injuries and survived them. They have an all-star goaltender in Frederik Andersen who did not have a good night last night, at least in regulation he did not. But right now, with one defenseman out, Jake Muzzin, their defense is defensively as a team, they've been abysmal the last 2 games.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of their game, and maybe it was the third goal by Winnipeg. Guy just walked in, shot it, very easy goal.
They had a 4-on-1 on one of the goals.
4-on-1 are hard to do, man.
Yeah, and this is the thing. It's like
a bad change, or was that just everybody's on one side of the ice?
Well, I am pretty sure that on the 4-on-1, like Justin Hall pinched in and there was nobody back except the one defenseman, which was Dermott. Now this is the problem right now, and we'll get back to the actual game here. And I'm just analyzing what's going on with the Leafs.
Yeah.
Without Muzzin as a stabilizing force on the second pairing, it was Muzzin and Justin Hall, and Justin Hall's been having a very good year. He's actually led the Leafs in plus minus, if you can believe it.
Yeah.
With the Muzzin injury, they were forced to insert Martin Marincin on the second pairing with Justin Hall. That didn't work. Now they've moved Marincin down to the bottom pairing with Ceci, and they have Dermott and Hall. And yesterday, that didn't work. It's not just the defense, though. It is the fact that you have a bunch of high flyers playing offense, and they don't want to play defense. Or I don't think it's they don't know how to. They don't want to. And they've been winning over this, like that 10-game point streak, scoring over 5 goals a game.
When I watch the Leafs, they love to finesse it, man. They love to pass the puck around and show off the speed and skill. They love the behind-the-back stuff, the drop passes, the between the leg. They love all of that. But you're right. None of them want to play hard defense as a forward.
And you can say you can turn it on like that when it comes time to the playoffs, but we know that's not the case.
No, it's not.
We know that teams that try to do that. I mean, the Edmonton Oilers in their heyday with Gretzky and Messier could do that. It's a different game now. So you sort of have to work at playing that two-way game, and that's the problem. The Leafs they're getting their success on being able to outscore teams, and this is around the time of the time of the year where the game changes. Around the All-Star break, it gets tighter, it gets tougher, the checking gets more difficult, and teams will not give up goals in big bunches. And right now, I mean, the Leafs were very, very fortunate that Austin Matthews tied the game with, I think it was 12 seconds left on a blistering one-timer to tie the game. So they got a point out of it, and that's good. But I have a feeling that Sheldon Keefe is going to start like sort of beating it into their head that you cannot play like riverboat hockey or shinny or whatever you want to call it and win. And they are going to have to batten down the hatches at a certain point.
Wait, so did I hear Michael Jello say it's okay to get a point at home? Did I hear that?
No. I mean, I let's just say this. I thought
it sounded like to me.
Thought the way that they were playing, they were gonna get no points. They got one. They salvaged one, but they've been playing great on the road and at home. If it isn't a team like New Jersey or Detroit, they lost to Edmonton because they didn't even. It was basically like I said, wide open hockey with McDavid walking around people.
Mm-hmm. And
now Winnipeg, and they beat Winnipeg in Winnipeg last week, but they gave up 48 shots on goal, and Anderson was like incredible. This time, Anderson was human, gave up 3 goals on limited shots, but then played great in a 3-on-3 overtime. And this is the thing. I know people want the shootout gone. The league doesn't want it gone. So is it going to go anywhere? No. But last night, the shootout between Toronto and Winnipeg was incredible. As Paul Maurice said, it was what was it? A shit show, and it was great because it was exciting and it was back and forth. There was a 2-on-0 one way.
I just really don't like the 3-on-3 because it's hard to control it. Like the other day, the Flyers are in 3-on-3, and Travis Sanheim loses his stick. Dougie Hamilton notices that. He goes right in, shoots it through Sanheim's legs, and it goes through Reimer's legs. And that not Reimer. Everything goes through Reimer's legs.
A Mack truck goes through Reimer's legs. You get
Elliott's, and they get the win, right? And that kind of stuff infuriates coaches because they have no control over it.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I don't think that Maurice was giving a stamp of approval to 3-on-3, but I actually think it's probably preferable in terms of excitement than shootout.
Make it longer, like make it a 10-minute 3-on-3,
and eliminate the shootout. And if it's a tie at the end of it, it's a tie.
No, but you don't have to eliminate the shootout. I think if you make it 10 minutes, they are going to have an incredibly hard time trying to fake it for 10 minutes of hockey. For 5 minutes, they could fake it for 2 or 3 minutes, take a few shots, and if it works, great. If not, they'll do it. But I don't think they'll do it for 10 because think about it. For 5 minutes, you don't have to worry about more than 3 rotations, right? Like one day, Alain Vigneault said, well, we had Morgan Frost on like the 5th rotation. Well, that 5th rotation never happened because you don't really have to do it. And so, but if you did it 5 on for 10 minutes, then it would happen.
Yeah. Freddie Gauthier will be on the 12th rotation, which means he'll get into the first period of the next game. Okay. The second game from last night was one that you were at. The Flyers beat the Capitals 3-2. The game winner was a shorthanded goal by Kevin Hayes in the second period. How was that game, Ross?
Well, first thing, I'll give Anthony credit because he posted home Flyers as a hashtag. He's trying to work off my road Flyers hashtag, and that's fine. They are a different team at home, and I told people who came and visited the game that this would be a different team and a different game. And after the game, Robert Hagg basically said, look, this was a must-win. And I even said it yesterday, right? They knew this was a must-win because it's a 4-point game against a tough team. Now, the interesting thing about the Capitals was apparently they had flu going through the team, and that's maybe why Ovechkin didn't have his best game. Even Wilson was sort of antagonistic for parts of the game, but not enough of them. But the Flyers really had a good forecheck. In the second period, they played tremendous defense, although they only had 3 shots on goal, but they got a goal. And so the Kevin Hayes goal, he is the one guy right now on that team that could snip out a shorthanded chance. And now I've always told people, if he's got a little bit of room, he can press the accelerator, and he's got good hands. Now, he only has 1 shot when he gets in tight on the goalie, and he always goes one of the posts and backhand side usually. And that's his fake, right? And Holtby had it perfectly covered, completely stretched, and Hayes got it through like that. Like that's, that stuff happens. But the power play for the Capitals was horrendous. The penalty kill for the Flyers was good. It was a combination of both, but the Capitals were 0 for 5 on the power play, which you would think is impossible for the amount of talent that they have on their team. And so I go back to the McClellan conversation yesterday thinking that, they're going to probably trade someone off that roster to upgrade themselves, whether it be a forward or on defense. And as an example, I thought about Lars Eller. Would they try and upgrade that spot? Because he's on 4 years left. I don't think he makes tremendous money.
3 years at 3.5.
So 3 years, 3.5. If they go talking to Ottawa, could they get Chris Tierney or someone like that and upgrade with a little inducement?
In looking at their list of players, I mean, I know that Eller was a key player for them winning the Cup a couple years ago. I would think that because he's been there for a while, I would think a guy like a Hagelin or a Richard Panik, who were both making $2.75 million, would be more likely for them to move out.
I don't know if anybody wants Panik. He's another one yesterday after getting a tripping penalty, got a 10-minute game misconduct, and nobody really explained it. I wasn't probably in the Caps room long enough. If somebody was going to explain it, I didn't stay for the coach, for Reardon, but I have to imagine he said something stupid, right? That's what usually occurs in a situation like that.
Yeah, I mean, let's just say you're not going to get a return. You're going to get a return for Eller in terms of a draft pick or maybe a prospect. I don't think you're going to get much, but you might be able, since the cap hit is not that much on Panik, you could possibly just trade him and get something menial back.
Yeah,
and you're accomplishing the goal of clearing the cap space.
Well, yeah. I'm just thinking that if they trade Eller and they give a prospect to Ottawa or a pick, that Ottawa might trade someone like Tierney to him. And I think the Caps may need to do just a little tinkering like that, just so they're not so comfortable, because they're another team that likes to watch themselves pass and are, amazed at the finesse that they have and the speed when they turn it on. But they're a team that does seem to turn it on and turn it off too at times during periods. But a good home win for the Flyers. They needed it. It was a big deal. Carter Hart didn't have the greatest of starts, but he had a really strong finish. So, again, the difference with Carter Hart, though, is really good at home, not so good on the road. And that's what happens with a sophomore goalie a lot of times.
The other game last night was the Dallas Stars and the LA Kings. Dallas wins 2-1 on goals by Blake Como, and I think it was Jamie Benn with the other goal. Dallas is at 54 points, so they've sort of recovered from that early start, and then they had the long winning streak. Then they slumped again, and now they're sort of back. The thing about Dallas is that the goaltending is really good, both Bishop and Khudobin.
Yeah.
The only thing they have to really worry about is Bishop not getting hurt because he.
I have to say, Bonus is doing a better job than we thought.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent.
I knew when I was down there, I could tell the players really liked him and they relate to him. And so right now they're playing hard for him.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent there. So, I think that right now, I mean, obviously with the revelation of what happened with Jim Montgomery, Bonus is essentially just somebody who's steady and there, and like you said, likable. So then that's positive for them. All right, let's see here. There was some other news that I wanted to get to.
They're the second best team in Dallas right now. Clearly the Mavs are better, but you never know.
Yeah, I like to see Luka Doncic skate.
He's a pretty good athlete, Mike. I kind of think he might be able to do it.
I don't doubt it. He's. I saw a question here I wanted to answer, but let's go to what we were talking about.
You're totally mismanaging the chat room now. I just want to say that.
I am mismanaging it. I'm not even interacting.
Manages it. Yes, you.
I'm not even interacting with it. What are you talking about? Jeez. All right, let's continue the conversation we were having before in terms of the landscape right now when it comes to defensemen, because I look at the Atlantic Division right now, and Buffalo has a surplus of defensemen, and but they're really defensemen that nobody wants other than Ristolainen. I mean, nobody really wants Bogosian. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to move Bogosian because, I mean, even though he's requested a trade, because it's a $5 million cap hit, it's going to require the Sabres to retain salary.
I'm sure if the Atlanta Thrashers were around, they would take Bogosian in the trade, but I don't know if anybody else will.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I'm getting the sense that they don't want to trade Ristolainen unless they get like the forward that they desperately want, and right. I don't think anybody's offering that in season. And obviously, Dahlin and some of the younger guys, they're not moving because they're inexpensive and they have a lot of talent. But there's one, maybe two defensemen that are, there's been talk about Colin Miller possibly being available. Okay. But I don't buy it. Now, in Boston, Jimmy Murphy tweeted out yesterday that there was some chatter about John Moore going to the Chicago Blackhawks. We'll see about that. I mean,
from the Chicago area. If not, he definitely played in the USHL there.
Right.
And so, yeah, I could see fans liking that, and maybe Chicago fans getting some faint hope, like, hey, we've upgraded on defense, we could win this. Yeah.
I know that Ack wrote today about the Canadians not being sellers but being buyers. Let's just say this: who would want to buy somebody from the Canadians right now?
Right. I mean, sellers for the Canadians, when they have such a low cap hit anyhow, is really, they're only going to be buyers. That would be like saying that this year Columbus would be sellers. They're not going to be sellers. They'll be buyers too if they're in it.
I mean, they just traded, or they just signed Kovalchuk. They just traded for Scandella. That's two of their UFAs. Nate Thompson and Christian Folan, who they placed on waivers yesterday, are their other ones. So there is nobody to sell.
No, there's no going on.
Now, encouraging news, Brendan Gallagher skated today.
You know what the selling would be like? It'd be like buying a house in Love Canal. Okay, go ahead.
Bad news. Ben Sherratt got hurt in the game against Detroit. So add Sherratt to the list of Gallagher, Drouin, Armia, and there's one other injured. But let's just say this: they don't have enough talent, which is what we've been saying. Now, I'll say this: what Bergevin can do is, because they have cap space, because they didn't sign Aho, they didn't add anybody of major financial consequence. They could be one of these teams that could take on a salary. Now, whether it's a salary of somebody who's signed long term, or if it's a rental in terms of like, okay, this team wants to clear cap space to make a move, so the Canadians could take them on and get something for them. That's constructive, but they're trailing off right now in the race in the Atlantic. They're not making the playoffs.
No, I agree, but I will say this: I have liked the play of Nick Suzuki, and actually, Nick Suzuki and Quinn Hughes. No surprise. I mean, I had Hughes in my preseason Calder picks, are zooming up the charts and giving Cale Makar a run for it now. When Makar missed time, Quinn Hughes is only 2 points behind Cale Makar. Now Olofsson leads them all, but I think we writers are going to look at Olofsson like he's got to come back and do something. He had this amazing start. If he comes back and finishes strong, he'll be in the heart of it too. If he doesn't, right, those are just going to be sort of empty points, unfortunately.
Yeah, and he's got to do more 5-on-5, I would think. Now, Ottawa has got 3 UFA defensemen. One, I think, would be interested. One would have interest from teams that are looking for a little muscle, but I can't imagine Eugene Melnyk signing off on trading his favorite interviewer, Mark Burbies.
Montreal. I'm completely shocked here by looking and seeing that Paling has no points in 17 games. I kind of wonder if that injury really derailed him this year from being the player that he looked like. He came out of the gate strong too. Well,
scoring a hat trick in the season finale against Toronto. I mean,
yeah,
defensively it was against Toronto, and Toronto had nothing to play for, but still.
No, but even this year in preseason and stuff looked really good. I can't believe he doesn't even have a point.
Yeah, that's stunning. But I mean, like for a team looking for muscle, Borvieski might be somebody that a team would be interested in for a low price. I'm not sure of the availability of Ron Hainsey. I do, but I think that if he's amenable, if he was, I think he has a limited no trade, but there would be interest. Although his cap hit for the type of defenseman he is, it's $3.5 million. They're
going to have to retain, and they don't retain. I think that's going to teams are going to hesitate to move that unless it's an even 3.5 or 3.5. That's the way Hainsey can move.
Right, or take back a salary that removes a little bit of the price tag on there. Yeah. Boston has had some injuries on the blue line that we mentioned more as a potential move out. Now he's got 3 more years at 2.75. So
that's fine. Even Chicago can afford that.
I mean, you could look I know Krug was out. See, I don't, if Boston makes a move, I think Boston's moving to add a forward. It's not going to be to add another defenseman.
No, I agree. It's a forward because they still have Vakanainen they could pop in there. I mean, the interesting thing is, and I just wrote about him yesterday, Carson Kuhlman, he had that nice goal in the Stanley Cup. He played well at times. He has that fracture in his leg. They are going to get him back at some point, and I kind of wonder if they're not able to acquire a forward, would he give them a little spark? Maybe.
Yeah. Washington, like I said, I think they're interested in only a depth move. So I don't think it's going to be anything of major consequence unless they follow the plan, like you were saying, of moving out somebody to make a bigger move. The Islanders and the Flyers, we talked about in terms of them probably being interested in acquiring a defenseman. Question is, I know that with the Islanders, budget is always a concern. With the Flyers, cap is a concern. How much room that they'll have.
Yeah, they're going to, I'm going to tell you this. Daniel Friedman played yesterday. He had almost no time to get to know players, practice with the team, whatever. He's played very limited at the NHL level. Mm-hmm. He had a really off first 2 periods because, again, it's a bit of a shock to kind of throw a guy in like that. But he made a great play that saved a goal in the 3rd period. And this is a guy who I scouted a long time ago with Ivan Provorov in the USHL. And he has stayed in the Flyers system, and he's fast, and he's about 5'10", but he's solid where, he could lay a few hits. I kind of wonder now when Gostisbehere comes back if they're going to insert him right back in because he had some sort of knee ailment or something, so he didn't play. the defense looked better without him, Mike. That's going to be something where all of a sudden that makes him very available, more so than before.
He just doesn't seem to be a good fit with Finau.
Right. And which is the opposite of what we all thought. But right now, if Friedman can put together a couple of good games here, if Gostisbehere sits, and I'm not sure he will because Myers didn't play particularly great, but if they go with that for a little while, it could be the beginning of the end for Shane Gostisbehere.
Now,
I have a quiz for you too.
Mm-hmm.
So as badly as we talk about San Jose and knowingly how bad the Kings are, how many points are Chicago ahead of the Kings?
2.
6. Because they're 6-4 in their last 10, right? So they're on a hot streak for them, and they're literally only 6 points out of the cellar.
Yeah, it's not been a good year for the Hawks. But remember,
it's just weird when you have a team that may be selling hope still, like, hey, we're going to still have a good second half. It could happen because this league, if you go 10-1, they'll be in the playoffs. But
it could happen because it happened last year. But
they fell short.
But that first half, the first half killed Quenneville, ended his reign in Chicago. And this year, I don't think it's going to kill Colleton in terms of in season, him getting fired. But if they don't show any progress, which they haven't shown so far, then his tenure is going to be in question.
I mean, here's the wild thing about it. Nashville's only a point ahead of Chicago, although they have 2 games in hand. Minnesota has a game in hand. They're ahead of both of them. Vancouver got hot, right? So they're ahead of all of them, but we don't know if that'll stick like that. But we do have to give some credit here to Minnesota. I think it's fair. I think Bill Guerin's at least steadied the ship there. And
the indicator was when the Leafs went through Minnesota and they talked to Guerin and talked to some other. I think they talked to Mike Russo. There was some interview, as part of the interview process before that game, talking about the fact that they probably would have to trade cap space, trade somebody who has a cap hit to make an addition, meaning a Jason Zucker, which that name has been out there for a while.
Right.
But I mean, Spurgeon is back. Dumba, I believe, is back.
Yeah, I think Dumba's back. I mean, Parise is playing well. Eric Stahl's a Hall of Famer, like we all know that, right?
And they're getting better play out of the younger group, the Cunnins and the Greenway.
Coming along. Yeah.
Now Pittsburgh, I think Pittsburgh should be in on looking for defense because Dumoulin is hurt. I think Justin Schultz is hurt again. They've been fortunate that guys like Marino and
Marino has really saved their bacon, man.
Yeah, Marino and Pedersen have played very well.
It's good. Like I told you, I go back to the draft with that kid.
Right.
He's just strolling around at the draft. He walks up to Anthony and I. We interview him. He's just a good guy. I had heard a little bit about him being a decent defenseman and a decent skater. That's exactly what he is. He doesn't make mistakes, and I still don't know how they acquired him in a trade. I don't remember. What did Anaheim get?
Oh, it was Sprong.
So, all right. Well, you know what? It's a good trade for them, man.
Yep. So Columbus doesn't need defensive help. They, in fact, with
working out with the team, so I guess he's not that far off, Mike.
Who is?
Schultz.
Okay. Like I said, Columbus with the 1-2 punch of Werenski and Jones, with Murray and Savard, they're pretty solid defensively, so they're not going to be looking for defense. But and I don't think the Rangers are. I mean, in fact, I think if they could find somebody to take Mark Stahl off their hands, they would do it.
Yeah, they won't. They're going to have to buy him out.
Or he retires.
I don't think he'll retire.
Yeah. And New Jersey, I think, is interesting. Now I was going to write about this in the blog today, just because we're in the season where scouts being at games means something.
Oh, yeah, there were 12 at the Flyers game yesterday.
And there was a decent amount at the Leaf game, but
3 games. I do want to caution people. There were only 3 games.
Right. But there were a decent amount at the Leaf game last night, and a lot of them are regulars, that they're area scouts who are there all the time.
Right.
New Jersey had 2 scouts, and they were not like area scouts.
Well, Chicago had 2 also, and And I feel like Chicago could make a trade with the Capitals just as easily as they could make a trade with the Flyers.
And New Jersey could make a deal with Winnipeg just as much as they could make a deal with the Leafs, because
I think more Winnipeg, because New Jersey has two defensemen. They have Andy Green, who will be on the low end, but teams will want him because he can play a lot of different roles and he still has some offense in his game. And they have Sami Vatanen.
Right.
And I think if Winnipeg were allowed to negotiate with Vatanen and he were able to sign a deal there, that, you might be able to get like a Christian Vesalainen out of the deal and a pick. I think Shiro, if he's smart, tries to pull something like that off, because Vatanen is the best defenseman on the market until he's not on the market.
Well, this is the problem. The problem is that why is Vatanen going to sign a contract? Why?
Well, we don't know, but what if he likes Maurice or he likes it there? What if they offer him more money than he thinks? What if they have this little negotiation? And again, this is unlikely because we're talking about Chevy, but what if they have this negotiation and, Vatanen's agent goes, you know what they're offering? I think that's more than what we get during the summer. You never know.
The complicating factor with Winnipeg is that the Bufflin thing is still unknown.
And that could kill them in what their maneuverability. So they might go after Andy Green because
Andy Green actually makes more money. So no, I think if anything, because first of all, New Jersey
money out to get them.
New Jersey's going to have to either retain salary or take a salary back. And if you're talking Winnipeg and you're talking a salary back that could lessen the cost, they really don't have.
What's the salary between like Brian Little and Andy Green?
Well, Brian Little's on injured reserve
for the whole year.
Yeah, he's been out since the beginning of the year, and I don't know if he's coming back. He might
be able to come back.
Yeah, he's making 5.2. Kulikov is making 4.3.
Okay. So what if, even if he is on injured reserve, if he comes back and makes like a day appearance so they could trade him, what if they do trade him, Winnipeg does, and a pick to get Green and like a prospect? That could happen.
I'm pretty sure from our discussions with Peter that with his new contract, Little has a no move. So I don't think they're moving Little. But I do think that they're looking for a defenseman, but it could be like last year at the deadline when they got a cheaper option in Nathan Beaulieu and added that rather than a pricey thing.
Now, as an example, what if Green gets traded to another team, right? They wash some of the money, and then half of that ends up going to Winnipeg in a deal for whoever. Like that kind of deal might get facilitated.
Yeah. Now, Detroit, they have Green, they have Daly, they have Erickson. Nobody in their right mind wants Jonathan Erickson.
Jonathan Erickson.
Yeah, they've already sent him to the minors once, and probably if they want to play some of their young kids and he's still healthy, they'll probably do that again. But Green, if healthy, and Daly, if healthy, are two veteran guys that teams might want.
Yeah.
And the complicating factor here is with Green, he is making, I think, 5.5.
I think Detroit would take half the money if they got like a pick and a player.
Yeah, 5.375, and Daly's making 3.1. So,
I'm sure Yzerman has to like talk to Funky Cold Zadina before he does it to see if that's okay.
Switching to the West, St. Louis is okay on defense. And I know Parayko was injured recently, but it doesn't sound like it's a long-term thing, so they could weather that.
Not long-term. I don't believe it is.
And Dallas, with Heiskanen and Klingberg and Lindell, they're
if you mispronounce his name, man.
Who's that?
It's Heiskanen.
Oh Christ! Come on.
Been Heiskanen for a year. Where you been?
I've been calling him Heiskanen.
Right, and he's going to come after you.
Okay.
When Dallas rolls, don't call him Heiskanen.
Christ. Colorado is in a very interesting position because I think their defense is a lot better than it was a few years ago, and it's okay. Their offense is great. I'm questionable about their goaltending. I don't know whether I don't like Grubauer and Francouz going into the postseason, but they seem to be okay with it. But they have cap space. They have the most cap space of any team going into the trade season. That means they could really add anything. They could add another defenseman. They could add another forward. They could bring in a goaltender. So it must be nice to be Joe Sakic.
It's really nice. And they could do something. I don't think they're going to do anything with the goaltending. I do think they like Grubauer. And Francouz has proved to be a good backup. I don't think they're going to do anything there, Mike.
Well, they may not. If they fall short this year and the goaltending is the problem, then they can address it in the future. But I do think that they're going to take advantage of the opportunity because they have the cap space to add something. Whether that means that they're the ones that go after Kreider, whether that means they go after Pajot. I mean, I don't know. All I know is that they have the ability to do it, and they have the boatload of prospects and draft picks to do it, that it would make sense for them to do it. In the Pacific, I think Arizona is, now that they've got, Yarmulson is either back or very close to being back. Add that to Ekman Larson and Demers and Chikrin. I think they could use a depth defenseman, but I think their concern right now more than anything is the health of the two goaltenders. And Kemper might be back soon, but and Ranta's day to day. But you have Aiden Hill as your starting goalie right now. That's not.
That's the team where if you're looking for Georgiev's possible landing spot, it could be there.
Now, here's one that's sort of like Washington in the East, and it's weird because it's McPhee, the former Caps GM. I think Vegas desperately needs an upgrade on the blue line, because after Theodore and Schmidt, it's Braden McNabb, Nick Holden, John Merrill, Englund, and Nicholas Hague. I think they need a dramatic upgrade on the blue line, but they have no cap space, so it would have to be a money in, money out scenario, and that could mean moving out of Cody Eakin, or if somebody wants to take on a longer term contract like an Alex Tuck. I mean, they don't have the cap space to move around, but they need to upgrade on the blue line.
And who is that?
Vegas.
They do. But they've needed it for years, and they really have done only wholesale changes to it. But they do. And so we'll see. Like, I don't know who is on their cap. I mean, they made some moves this year.
Cody Eakin is an expiring contract at $3.8 million.
He's a valuable player.
Well, I mean,
but I don't think he can get you a defenseman either. He could just get you the space.
Well, see, that's the thing. I don't know how possible it's going to be for these teams to make one-for-one direct deals. It's going to be, again, it's going to be like what happened between Montreal, Buffalo, and Calgary, where teams are trading other pieces to other teams for a draft pick, opening up the cap space, and then making another deal. That's the only way it seems to work right now.
Yeah.
Now, Edmonton. We know Edmonton's got young defensemen who are coming in the next year to 2 to 3 years. Broberg and
Bouchard
and Semerkov. But right now, I mean, I like Clefbaum. He's a good defenseman.
Nice job.
Yeah, I like Darnell Nurse. I've never thought Adam Larson was anything more than a marginal top four.
I'll kill you.
And Chris Russell is brutal. And the rest of their defenses, Ethan Bear has had a good rookie season.
Yeah, so I mean, you could make the argument they got 3 or 4 decent. It'll improve when Bouchard gets there. Whenever he gets there, Holland's not going to rush him now. They could try something. I mean, they are in it.
Yeah.
So they could. Their problem is.
Their problem is illustrated by what Ken Holland said earlier this week. They want to improve, but they don't want to trade any of their future assets.
Right.
Great. So then they're not going to improve.
Something, right? Right. So he's going to have to say, I made this trade, but I didn't trade any of our top 3 prospects. You know what I mean? That's how it's going to have to go. So now that he's playing Yamamoto, they won't trade Yamamoto, right? Because he's one of their top prospects. They won't trade Bouchard, and they won't trade somebody else, but maybe Tyler Benson gets traded. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like that's
the wild card here is Puljujärvi.
no, he's nothing.
Well, he's nothing now because they wanted more for him.
Wait, think about this, okay?
Well, let me just finish. They had more. They had offers for him. Maybe it was not what they wanted for him before December 1st. Now apparently he's dropped off and playing in the SM Liga. He's not scoring as much. Okay, now his value is down. Well, you should have moved him when you had a chance to move him.
They should have. He has no value. Matter of fact, the same way Elias Anderson said, I may just have to not play hockey for a year and a half, Puljujärvi may just play out his contract there.
Well, ironically, and we'll get back to the rest of the list in a minute here.
Or he may never come back. But
since you mentioned Anderson, there was I spotted this piece. Anderson's dad, Nicholas, works for the LA Kings.
Mm-hmm.
He spoke about the situation with his son, saying his decision to leave the team had to do with him taking care of his mental health. Mm-hmm. He says, I feel like Elias has been very clear with the media that it has nothing to do with him playing in Hartford. People still keep mentioning it. I just don't get that. He says, I'm proud and happy for Elias making this decision. I support him 1,000%, just as I hope any parent would. He hasn't been feeling well, which is sad. And the important thing now is that he focuses on that and his own well-being. He said he couldn't talk any more about the reasons why, but just that he hopes the situation will play out positively.
Right. I mean, just remember what we have been talking about with the Mule, right? When he talked about showing up at the rink, getting berated.
Franzen, yeah.
Johan Franzen, what that was like. I don't know if Quinn had been doing that with Anderson, but maybe it got to the point where all the negativity was too much for him because he's away from home. He's a kid. He's not in his homeland. He's in a major metropolitan area with a lot of focus. It can be too much for a human being. And so, yeah, I don't fault him at all. I mean, here's the interesting thing. Preseason, this is what I wrote about Anderson. After I spoke to him and after I watched him in the game against the Flyers, I said he's playing his game, which, again, his game means third-line center, fourth-line center. That's his game. I don't care where he got drafted or whether you think that's a good draft pick or not. That's his game. Mm-hmm. Tough defensively, physically, and showing, at least some offense, tricky moves I wrote because that game he had some. But he's developing, and the year has made a difference. And somehow it degraded from there, probably because he didn't have a set line, probably because his minutes, we talked about his minutes being messed around with. All those things matter.
I agree. There are a number of situations right now in the league with young players in situations, not to all like Anderson, but similar. The Hosang thing with the Islanders, Bracco with the Leafs, Puljujärvi with Edmonton, Honka with Dallas. Some of these players just want an opportunity to go someplace where they have a chance to play and just continue their careers. And, it's regrettable that these situations have.
Yeah, and I'm not saying there's no fault on Anderson, but what I'm saying is it's a stark contrast because when I spoke to him, and just because I interviewed him 3 or 4 times before in my life, it was a very positive conversation, a very positive vibe, and now it's not. And so that's the part where I feel for the kid and for the trolls online that are saying those nasty things, they don't get it.
Just to finish out the West here, we talked about Winnipeg and we talked about Calgary already. Vancouver made additions on the blue line in terms of Myers and Jordy Ben, so I don't think they're going to make it. Now, the thing is, if they drop out, and this is the interesting thing, if they drop out of the playoff race, which right now, believe me, this the ownership in Vancouver is all in on making the playoffs. So they would have to be probably 10 to 12 points out of the wild card to decide to sell off at the deadline. But they do have Tanev as a blue liner who has had interest. Teams have been interested in him off and on over the years. and I believe he's still healthy right now, which, knock on wood for him. Yeah. But if they fall out of the race, I could see them trading Tanev, and maybe even if they don't fall out of the race, I mean, if they have everybody else healthy and back in the lineup, that they would risk trading Tanev. But other teams, Minnesota, I think is solid on defense. I don't think they want to do anything. Now, somebody asked me this about Nashville. I mean, would they consider trading a guy like Ekholm? And I'm like, no. They have the top. They traded Subban. Now they've signed Yossi. They have Yossi, Fabro, Ellis, and Ekholm. They've got that solid top four.
Right.
David Poile never goes away from that, so they're not trading any of those guys.
No, they're untouchable.
Chicago, I don't think anybody in their right mind. Seabrook is out for the rest of the year. I could see Seabrook being traded next year if he's an LTIR guy and teams want space and he's never going to play again, but we don't know if that's the case. I can't see anybody ever trading for Connor Murphy or Oli Mata. Now, here's the interesting one. Eric Gustafson, who scored, I think, 60 points last year, Russ, is a UFA. He's making $1.2 million. He's going to make a lot more as a free agent.
He'll make at least 4 or 4.5. So,
I mean, do you spend bad money on top of good on Gustafson, sign him to what, a top offensive defenseman gets, which is, $5-6 million on a long-term deal, or do you trade him and you get value for him?
It's a good question. We all say trade him, but I don't know if that will be what happens.
I don't know if Chicago, I don't know what, and I'm looking up his points right now. I don't think he's having as good a offensive year as he did last year.
We do have some breaking. So Pierre LeBrun did get a quote from Laviolette, and it's pretty much what you expect from Laviolette. I don't know if getting fired will ever surprise me because you're in a profession where you're expected to win.
Right.
That's a good way of taking it, man. I mean, that's really
and based on the way the NHL is, he's going to probably have a job next year or the year after when he wants
a job next year.
What's that?
I think he'll have a job next year.
Yeah. Okay. So Gustafson had 60 points last year, 17 goals, 43 assists in 79 games. This year, 43 games, he's on pace for about 40 points, 5 goals, 13 assists in 43 games. So he's falling off a little bit. So maybe his salary demand, his leverage for a salary demand high, like I was saying, is not there. But after 60 points, teams are going to be interested, and it's a question of whether the Blackhawks want to pay him or not pay him.
Yeah.
San Jose, like we mentioned, Brendan Dillon is somebody that they might consider to sell. Anaheim has gone down the road of trading their defensive depth, and now that depth is gone. They still have Fowler, Lindholm, Manson. They had to trade for Erica Branson. Jakob Larson is still young, so we don't know what exactly he is, but the depth in that organization is gone. And there's even been talk that they would be in on re-signing Vatanen and bringing him back to Anaheim if he goes free agent at the end of the year. So they know him. They probably didn't want to trade him, but they knew that they couldn't afford him.
Yeah.
And LA, keep dreaming about them trading Doughty because it's not going to happen. Alec Martinez is out injured, but I think he will be back before the deadline. And there has been some chatter with a year left in his contract that he might have. There might be some interest in him. So we'll go. This is an ongoing thing.
If he's healthy, I could see it.
Yeah, this is an ongoing, evolving thing. As we get closer to the deadline, players will either get signed or they'll get or they'll become available. So we'll see. We'll take a couple questions here to end the show.
I have a quiz for you.
Okay.
Who is the worst face-off team in the NHL?
I heard this yesterday. Is it Winnipeg?
No.
It's not Toronto.
No. Although Toronto has Andreas Jansson's on the road trip, just so you know. He's day-to-day now.
Buffalo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew I heard it.
Taking tips from Ryan O'Reilly.
Not going there. Questions.
I'm just saying, this is reality, man.
I know. Please. As soon as they traded Ryan O'Reilly, they were looking for a replacement for Ryan O'Reilly.
Yeah.
Davey Jones asked, Mike, do you think after 10 years the Leaf fans will curse Dubas for not fixing the problem with the Leafs by adding physical players and not willing to pay the price to acquire them? Okay, first of all, Dubas hasn't been there 10 years, so he's not responsible for the last 10 years.
Right.
Second of all, there were players that were labeled as tough over, like, say, the last 5 years, like Colton Orr. Well, that's more like 7 or 8 years ago. Colton Orr and Fraser McLaren. They weren't players that could play regularly, so they were anchors more than anything. Roman Polak is a bottom pairing defenseman. I liked him. I liked the grit that he brought, but he was not somebody who could play in the top 4. That's the problem. They have not had
Stanley Cup champion.
Yeah, they have not had toughness.
No.
In the top 6 on their forwards.
I think he's injured again, isn't he? I believe he is.
Who's that?
Polak. I think he's injured again too.
No, I think he's back.
Is he back? Okay. But he always gets injured. That's the point.
Because he plays a rough and tumble style.
Yeah.
Okay. Dubas is not somebody who values toughness the way the fans do.
That's fair.
I think he's heavy on skill and speed. I don't think if he can get toughness that fits into that construct, like Mason Marchment is playing now as a 4th liner. He's a fast player. He's improved dramatically in his skating ability. He plays tough. He's not an enforcer. Jake Muzzin on the blue line is one of the only guys who plays physically. I think if Dubas can add physical players, he does, but I think he likes the style of speed and skill. Now, do I agree with that? Well, no, I respectfully disagree in the fact that if they play Boston in the first round of the playoffs, Boston is going to do what they've done the last few years. They're going to try to run the Leafs out of the building. And
I'm going to give you a Little Rascals analogy for this. So basically, Butch used to get beat up by Alfalfa all the time, and Butch would kind of show off doing that. And there are some guys in this league that do it, but I would take Woyd over Butch every time because he was consistently tough and not showing off. So, like, in other words, if the Leafs went out and got a guy that just sort of likes to do the big check and the fight because it gets the crowd going, that's not going to help me either.
No, but you do realize you're talking about a show that's 90 years old.
I don't care. They've remade it in movies. There's YouTube. Have you not noticed? I don't care. If you don't care,
I've noticed.
It's your loss.
I've noticed. Creepy Robsta. I love that. Creepy Robsta asks, who picks up Toffoli?
Boston Bruins.
I agree. And I think the Bruins are. Question from Caleb C. Who do you think the Pens target with Gensel likely out for the year? Toffoli, Kreider, Saad. Okay, I don't think they'll get Toffoli.
No.
I don't think they'd be willing to pay as much as they would need to for Kreider. Saad is a Pittsburgh native, but he has another year left in his contract at $6 million.
Yeah, I don't think they're doing that. I think they might go after Kreider. I do.
I'll give you a dark horse. Connor Sheary.
Yeah, I can see Sheary coming back, but he doesn't. I mean, he makes the same as Kreider now.
Well, Sheary is making 3-something.
3-something. Well, it's close.
Yeah.
I mean, the Rangers would definitely retain money on Kreider to make a deal because they probably think they're getting him back anyhow.
Yeah.
Sheary, Buffalo would just be looking to lose that contract, and I don't know if Pittsburgh wants to add because Pittsburgh didn't want to sign Sheary in the first place.
That's the thing. I think if Buffalo takes a salary back, that then
how many more years for Sheary?
He's a rental.
Oh, he is. Oh, okay, then they would rent him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that they're familiar with him. They know he'd fit in, so it wouldn't cause all the problems that you would think. So let's see here. A couple more. Two more questions maybe. Polak is not retired, Dean. Some people just think he's retired because he's so slow.
He's a Stanley Cup champion. That's all I know.
No, he's not.
Yeah, he was on St. Louis, wasn't he?
No, he was on Dallas.
He was on Dallas at the time. Oh, never mind. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Hard to keep up with Roman Polak.
Let's see here.
He was on St. Louis once. I know that.
Yes, he was. And then he got traded for Stanley Cup champion Carl. What's his name? Gunnarsson.
Yes, and Gunnarsson is still there. That's probably what the in my mind. Yes.
Yes, Gunnarsson. Yes.
I think he's hurt now and just came back too. He's another one that gets hurt all the time.
Yes. He's Bill C says they should give Backus up for in any deal with them. Nobody's taking David Backus. Nobody is taking David Backus.
In 2 or 3 years, Charlie Coyle will be David Backus.
Yeah. Caleb C says Sullivan hated Connor Sheary. Well, if that's the case, then probably not
on the team.
Right. But the problem is that they're short of forwards and they're not going to be that many available. And do they want to pay the price that it would take to get a Pajot? If you trade for Pajot, you're going to have to give up a first-round pick. If you trade for Kreider, you're going to have to give up a first-round pick. You're not going to have a trade a first-round pick to get Connor Sheary. That's the difference. Anyway. All right. We'll end it there. Last one. Rob J.K. says, what does Tampa do at the deadline? Well, that's embarrassing.
What's embarrassing?
I don't know what Michael was saying. He says that's embarrassing. Rob J.K. says, what does Tampa do at the deadline? Well, whatever it is, it's not going to be embarrassing.
Not a lot. I mean,
I think a defenseman.
Yeah, but they don't have a lot of cap space.
No. They don't.
They're going to have to do a creative kind of trade, but you're right. It'll be for a defenseman. And just for the people that say, well, Sullivan hates Sheary, we all thought that Torts hated Vinny Prospal too. And Vinny Prospal played with the Rangers for Torts. So, I
mean, here's the situation. Hedman and McDonough are making, McDonough's 6.75, Hedman's 7.8. After that, the highest paid defenseman on the Lightning is Kevin Shattenkirk at $1.7 million. I don't think they're trading any of the core forwards. They're not trading Kucherov, Stamkos, Point, Palat, Gord, Johnson, Killorn. That would sort of be counterproductive. What they probably try to do is trade, get somebody to take Mike Condon off their hands to open up cap space. He's on LTIR, but that adds cap space.
Who would their backup be? Who's their backup?
The backup right now is McElhinney. Condon's on LTIR.
McElhinney. No, they're fine. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and either that or Jan Ruta at $1.3 million or.
But they're not getting a great player. Is the point?
No. They're the only way they're getting a player that's effective is if the other team retains and they give a salary back. Michael says Trevor Daley to Tampa. Okay, well then. That might make sense because Yzerman would get some young player who he drafted in Tampa, and Tampa would take and Detroit would take on a salary to counterbalance Daley's salary. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it does.
So, all right.
The best story right now on the internet, but we'll talk about it tomorrow. Derek Jeter getting sued. Have a nice day, folks.
By who for what?
By a former Yankee prospect. Stay tuned.
Really? Okay, we'll see. I don't believe anything's wrong with Derek Jeter. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz.
That's the headline, folks.